Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the next episode of the Hillbilly Files. My name is Leo, for those of you who may not know, and we have a very interesting story for you guys today. Now, I have been out here for hours searching for a grave. It was about 25 when I left the house this morning and got up here, but it's warming up now. So we've peeled clothes just a little bit and moving on. Unfortunately, this is one of the strange cases where I can't find the grave. Now, it's not that big. The graveyard ain't that big, but I have covered the entire graveyard 4 times trying to find this grave and haven't had a bit of luck. You see, the old grave, the old stone, was just one of those like down there, you know, just an old concrete stone. And a newer one was added later. But I guess if it's all right with everybody else, I'll just sit down here on the wall and tell you the story. Now, I'm going to have to kind of set the stage just a little bit here to tell you this story, okay? Now, it was a very cold, foggy morning in October of 1935 when Okey Bevins' plane went down. The fog in Warren County, Ohio was so thick that fence lines, farms, and even the giant WLW broadcasting tower near Mason disappeared into the fog. On the Girard farm, the fields lay quiet under a heavy gray, cloudy ceiling. You couldn't see much of anything, but you could hear a plane, circling low, steady at first, then uneven, trying to find a path through the weather that wasn't giving him a chance. The Girards stepped outside, listening. They caught only quick, blurry flashes of a small yellow aircraft slipping in out of the fog. They later said the plane seemed to hop sideways, like the pilot was fighting to avoid something in front of him. Hidden in that wall of mist was the WLW tower, with its high-tension guy wires holding it up. Dangerous enough in clear weather, but nearly invisible in bad weather. A moment later, the engine dropped, twisted, and ended in a violent crash somewhere out there in the hayfield. When the fog finally thinned enough to show it, the wreckage was scattered across the field. The right wing was torn from the fuselage. The nose was crushed in. Okey lay pinned in the cockpit, his body folded by the force of the impact. The Girards tried to pull him free, but couldn't. A doctor was called, but there was nothing to save. Okey Bevins had died instantly in that field beneath the morning fog. They carried him away to the funeral home in Covington, Kentucky. His wife, Martha, the woman he had taught to fly, stood by him in shock, trying to understand how a man who had lived most of his life in the air could be taken out by a simple fog. Among the items recovered from the wreck was his logbook. It still showed the truth of his life. 6,768 hours in the air. 16 years worth of flying. Work flights, airmail routes, cross-country runs, business trips, and even a 1929 crash that nearly killed him, but didn't keep him on the ground for very long. Flying wasn't something that he did, it was who he really was. They first buried him in Linden Grove Cemetery in Covington. Cemetery records later show that in 1943, Okey's remains were moved from Linden Grove, another quiet stretch of Kentucky hillside, for a man who had spent the better part of his life far above the ground. While people mourned his loss, Martha, a picture published October 20th in 1928 in the Brooklyn Daily Eagle, shows her in a flying cap and goggles, sitting in her cockpit during an attempt to set an endurance record for women after taking off from Teterboro Airport near Hackensack, New Jersey. She wasn't just a pilot's wife. You see, she was a pilot herself, taught by the man that she had lost. Martha Helen Croninger was born February 25th in 1910 here in Kentucky. She lived a long life after Okey's death, passing away on December 6th in 1983 in Kenton County. She's buried at the Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Erlanger, Kentucky. But Okey's story had started decades earlier here in Pike County, Kentucky. His father, William Sherman Bevins, was born in 1865, a man whose life stayed on the ground along the Kentucky and West Virginia border. His mother, Rushy Blackburn, who we were looking for today, was born in 1878, the daughter of Granville R. Blackburn and Talitha May. She grew up in a world of creek banks, early coal camps, and the common Appalachian medicines of the time, the kind that families kept in plain bottles on their shelves, whether they understood the dangers of having it around or not. On February 22nd in 1905, in McDowell County, West Virginia, Rushy's life ended. The death record lists it very plainly: suicide by drinking laudanum, opium, dissolved in alcohol. There is no note or explanation, just a cause of death at a young age, 26 or 27. She was brought back across the Tug River into Pike County, Kentucky, and buried here at the Coburn Point Cemetery in Huddy, a small, quiet hillside cemetery. Her grave sat there for generations, unnoticed, never connected in public to the pilot who died 30 years later in Ohio. A new marker had been placed there, proof that someone in the family still remembered and still cares, even after more than a century. Rushy never lived long enough to see who her son would eventually become. She never saw him work or fly through the air. As for William Sherman, the records show only that he lived for many years after Rushy's death. They don't say whether he raised Okey or whether the boy grew up under the care of grandparents, aunts, or someone else in the family. All we know for certain is that Okey grew up in those same Pike County and Tug Fork valleys shaped by the mountains, moving toward a future that no one in his family could have predicted. That sky over Ohio, that yellow plain, that fog. And that's how the story comes together. A young mother lost to laudanum in 1905, a father who stayed on the ground, and their son, who rose into the air for 16 years and met his fate on a cold, foggy hayfield far from home. But now brought together at last for this story. We can't go back and make Okey's plane land safely, and we can't bring them back, obviously. But we can say their names again and bring their memory back for just a little while. And now that I've brought you all here and told you their story, Their legacy will live on in all of you, too. It's just a strange thing to think that someone would take their life at such a young age. I understand there's all kinds of problems. There's all kinds of things that in this world that can make your life hard. There's a lot of things that can make your life really hard. But the thing is, you can't give up, right? It's like anything else. You can't give up. If Rushy hadn't given up, she would have saw her son fly. She would have seen all the things that he had done, that he would one day do. But she ended her life. Unfortunately, Rushy's grave is an unknown, for now at least. Rest in peace. I hope you find the peace that you didn't find in this world. We'll see you guys later. Y'all have a really good day. This is Leo with the Hillbilly Files. Leo out.